There are over 186 different cognitive biases that could potentially impact the way in which you lead your team. So, this means that the way in which you make decisions, interpret different challenges that you have, a whole range of different things can be severely impacted by cognitive biases. So, in this sort of range of videos that we're doing, we're going to look at some of the most significant ones that will impact you. So, in this one, we're looking at the fundamental attribution error. So, this is a bias that we often find that we're afflicted by when we're assessing another person's actions or another team's performance. So what we do is we often take a simplistic view. So we'll actually note that someone's performance hasn't hit our expectations. So rather than sort of taking into account things like external factors, so maybe they didn't have enough resources or they didn't have the right technology, we'll have to attribute it to their character or their personality. So this often leads us to the assumption that, for example, they're being lazy, when actually it's a lot more complicated than that. Now, actually, the opposite is true of ourselves. So if we actually drop the ball on an activity or an action, or our performance dips, we'll often attribute it to external factors. So it's kind of like a slightly unfair way of sort of treating our people. So why does this happen? Well, one of the reasons is because it's actually a heuristic. So it's a shortcut that the brain takes, so we don't have to expend too much energy or resources on making decisions and judgments, which generally often does serve us. But when it comes to really important things like assessing someone's performance or their actions, it's really important as a leader to take the time to do some investigative work as well. So before we sort of dive into judgment, it's really important to sort of think about 4 potential things that could be contributing to it before we take the unfortunate step of labeling someone as lazy. So the first thing is that it might be down to a clarity problem. So the person that you're expecting to complete the task or action that hasn't done it to your level just is unclear in terms of what they have to do. So maybe you didn't articulate the problem correctly, or you weren't clear in your expectations, or maybe they didn't have enough opportunities to ask the questions that they needed in order to understand it. It could be that there's a competency problem. So they generally don't know how to do it. They haven't received training, or they haven't done it enough times for them to know intuitively what to do. Or it could be a motivation problem. So they might actually have conflicting objectives. So they might be, if they do this activity, it's actually going to stop them achieving another objective, which is actually the thing that they're really accountable for. So if they do it, it actually might get them into trouble. Or finally, it might be an infrastructure or systemic problem. So they don't have the tools or the resources or the technology, or there might be some kind of force majeure reason why they can't do it, but we don't necessarily take that into account. So, if their systems are too slow, or if they don't have access to the right information, that can actually stop them doing it. So as a manager, it's always really important to look between the lines before we rush to judgment, because it can have a seriously implicative effect on the motivation of our people.